Maria sat quietly on a long wooden bench at the train station. Her fingers held on tightly to a small brown leather suitcase that carried everything she had. She looked down at her hands, noticing how they trembled a little, though the air wasn't cold. The platform was almost empty. A few people walked by, talking softly, but none of them paid attention to the woman with tired eyes and a hopeful heart. She had been in this country for only 2 weeks, but it already felt like months. Back home, Maria had lived in a small, quiet village with dusty streets, a little church, and a few small shops. She had grown up with dreams of a happy family, of children running around in a small house filled with laughter. But as the years passed, life hadn't worked out the way she had imagined. Her parents were gone, her brothers and sisters had moved far away, and work in the village was hard to find. When she heard about a program that connected women from her country with men in America who were looking for wives, she thought maybe this was her last chance at a new life.
She imagined stepping off the train into the arms of someone kind and warm,
starting a new chapter where she would finally be loved and wanted. But the dream was not matching the reality. Every Sunday, the agency arranged introductions between women like Maria and men who had signed up to meet them. The meetings were held in a church hall not far from the station. The women would sit in rows wearing their best dresses, and the men would come in, talk for a while, and decide if they wanted to meet again. It was supposed to feel like hope. To Maria, it was beginning to feel like being a product on a shelf, waiting for someone to pick her. The first Sunday, she wore a blue dress that used to make her feel pretty. A tall man with kind eyes talked to her for 10 minutes. He smiled politely but didn't call back. The second Sunday, another man sat across from her, but his eyes wandered around the room the entire time. He didn't even seem to listen to what she said. By the third Sunday, Maria stopped trying to dress up. She still smiled, but it was softer now, like a candle that had burned too long. As she walked back to the station that afternoon, the wind brushed through her hair and she felt a heavy silence settle around her. Each step echoed on the pavement, reminding her how alone she was. She sat on that same bench every evening after the meetings. She liked to watch trains come and go. It made her feel like the world was still moving, even if her life wasn't. She often told herself, maybe next week someone will see me. But a small voice in her heart was growing louder, saying, maybe no one will. Maria didn't think of herself as beautiful. Her hair was plain, her clothes were simple, and she spoke with a soft accent that sometimes made people ask her to repeat herself. She had learned to hide her nervousness behind a shy smile, but deep inside, she was afraid. Afraid that she had come all this way for nothing. That particular Sunday afternoon, the sun hid behind thick gray clouds. The air felt heavy, like rain might fall soon. Maria walked slowly out of the church hall after another round of short conversations that led nowhere. She saw other women leaving too, some laughing, some holding hands with new partners, their faces bright with hope. Maria tried to be happy for them, but the ache in her chest grew deeper. She stopped near the edge of the small garden beside the church. A few yellow flowers grew there, their petals already bending in the wind. Maria bent down and touched one of them lightly. "At least you're not alone," she whispered. She started walking toward the station, where the wooden bench waited for her like an old friend. Her suitcase bumped lightly against her leg with each step. The sky was darker now. She wrapped her shawl around her shoulders and sat down, staring at the tracks. She thought about her life back home, about the nights when she lay in bed listening to the sound of crickets outside her window, wondering if someone somewhere in the world was also lying awake, thinking of her. She had waited for love for so long, but love, it seemed, was always passing her by. As she sat there lost in her thoughts, she didn't notice the small figure walking slowly down the platform. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with golden brown curls and a pink ribbon tied around her hair, was standing a few feet away. She wore a white dress and held a small stuffed bunny in her hand. Her shoes made a soft tapping sound as she moved closer. Maria blinked and looked up. She wasn't used to anyone approaching her. The little girl tilted her head and looked at Maria with wide, curious eyes, the kind of eyes that saw everything. "Hi," the little girl said softly, almost like she was afraid to interrupt. Maria was surprised. She looked around, expecting to see a parent nearby, but the platform was almost empty. "Hello," Maria answered gently. Her voice was warm but cautious. The girl took a tiny step closer. Why are you sad? Maria didn't know how to answer. She forced a smile, the one she always gave strangers to hide her real feelings. I'm not sad, she said softly. The girl shook her head like she didn't believe her. Yes, you are, she whispered. Your eyes look like rain. Maria's breath caught for a moment. No adult had ever said anything like that to her. But this little girl saw straight through the smile she had practiced so many times. The girl came even closer and stood in front of her. She held out her small stuffed bunny like she was offering a treasure. You can hold Bunny if you want, she said. Maria smiled again, but this time it wasn't forced. She slowly reached out and touched the soft bunny. Thank you, she said. The girl's eyes sparkled. She looked at Maria for a long time, studying her face. Then she leaned forward just a little, stood on her toes, and whispered something that made Maria's heart stop for a second. Can you be my mommy? The words hung in the air like a secret meant only for the two of them. Maria blinked, unsure if she had heard it right. Her hands tightened slightly around the stuffed bunny. What did you say? She asked softly. The girl repeated it even more quietly this time. Can you be my mommy? For a moment, Maria forgot the cold, the gray sky, the empty bench, and the quiet station. She just stared at the little girl standing in front of her with a hopeful smile, the kind Maria had not seen in years. The little girl didn't know Maria's story. She didn't know how many nights Maria had cried alone, how many times she had thought she wasn't enough, how many dreams she had packed into that small brown suitcase. She just saw a woman sitting alone and felt something in her heart. Maria's throat felt tight. She wanted to say something, but no words came out. Just then she heard footsteps behind the girl. A tall man with dark hair was walking toward them. He wore a plain jacket and looked a little shy as he approached. Lily, he said gently. What did I tell you about talking to strangers? The little girl turned around but didn't let go of her bunny. She's not a stranger, Lily said softly. She's nice. The man looked at Maria, and Maria quickly stood up, feeling embarrassed. I'm so sorry, she said in her soft accent. She just came over. But he shook his head, a small smile forming on his lips. It's okay, he said. His voice was kind, not sharp. She's a little too friendly sometimes. Lily tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, I want her to come with us, she whispered. The man looked surprised. Lily? He started to say, but Lily turned back to Maria with the same hopeful eyes. Maria didn't know what to do. A moment ago, she had felt invisible. Now, a child was looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. The man gave Maria a gentle, almost curious look, as if he too saw something different in her. I'm sorry if she bothered you, he said. Maria shook her head. No, she said softly. She didn't bother me. The man nodded and held out his hand to Lily, but Lily didn't move right away. She looked up at Maria and whispered again, Please don't be sad. Maria felt tears build behind her eyes, but she blinked them away before they could fall. She smiled at the little girl, and it was a real smile this time, a smile she hadn't felt in a long while. Thank you, she whispered back. Lily waved her tiny hand as she walked away with her father. Maria watched them go until they disappeared around the corner of the station. She sat down again on the bench, but something felt different now. For weeks she had felt like no one saw her. But in that small unexpected moment, a little girl with a pink ribbon and a soft bunny had looked at her and seen her heart. And for the first time in a very long time, Maria felt a small light flicker inside her. Not a big hope yet, but a spark that whispered maybe things can change. She didn't know yet that this small moment would become the beginning of something bigger than she had ever imagined. Maria could not stop thinking about the little girl with the pink ribbon. That single moment at the station felt like a spark in the middle of the darkness she had been living in for months. Every night as she lay on her small bed in the shared house provided by the agency, she remembered the way the girl's soft voice had whispered, Can you be my mommy? It had been such an innocent question, yet it touched something deep inside Maria's heart, a place she had carefully kept closed. She didn't even know the girl's name back then, but she remembered her bright eyes, her small hands holding the stuffed bunny, and her warm smile that didn't judge, didn't question, didn't turn away. A few days later, on another cold afternoon, Maria was sitting in the same church hall where new introductions took place. She wore a plain beige sweater and a soft scarf around her neck. She was no longer expecting anything special to happen, but then she heard a familiar giggle from the doorway. Her heart skipped a beat. Lily. She didn't even need to turn fully to know it was the same little girl. The sound of her laughter was light, like the sound of wind chimes. Lily ran inside, holding her father's hand tightly. Maria's eyes widened slightly, and she felt something warm spread through her chest. The man from the station, Lily's father, seemed a little more relaxed this time. He looked around, clearly not someone who came to these gatherings often. He wasn't dressed like most of the other men. While others wore suits and polished shoes, he wore a simple jacket, jeans, and work boots. His hair was a little messy, but his eyes were kind. Lily saw Maria sitting at the back and broke into the biggest smile. Without a second thought, she let go of her father's hand and ran straight toward Maria. "Hi," she said brightly. Maria smiled in return. "Hello," she answered softly, her accent wrapping gently around each word. Lily climbed onto the chair next to her and held up her bunny. "Bunny missed you," she said with all the seriousness of a little child sharing an important secret. Maria laughed quietly, the sound soft and warm. "I missed Bunny too," she said. Then she added in a whisper, "And I missed you." Lily leaned closer and whispered back, "I told Daddy about you." Maria blinked, surprised. "You did?" Lily nodded proudly. "I said you were nice. I said I want to see you again." Before Maria could respond, Lily's father approached them slowly. He looked slightly nervous, as if unsure if he should interrupt. "Lily?" he said gently. "Maybe the lady wants to sit with her friends." But Lily shook her head. "She doesn't have friends here," she said in that innocent, matter-of-fact way only a child could say. Then she looked at Maria. "Right?" Maria smiled shyly. "She is right," she admitted softly. "I don't have friends here." The man looked a little embarrassed but also smiled faintly. "I'm Thomas," he said, holding out his hand. "Maria," she replied, shaking it gently. That was how it began, not with a big moment, but with a small smile, a shy handshake, and a little girl sitting between them with a stuffed bunny. Over the next few weeks, Maria began to see them more often. Thomas didn't approach her like the other men had. There was no pressure, no fast promises. He was quiet, careful, but kind. He was a widower who had lost his wife 2 years earlier. Since then, he had raised Lily alone. He worked long hours at a small workshop in town, fixing furniture and doing small repairs. His life was simple, but his love for his daughter was strong and clear. Maria learned these things slowly, not because he told her all at once, but because he let her see it through his actions. When he picked Lily up, he always held her hand gently. When she got tired, he carried her without complaint. When Lily talked, he listened like her words mattered more than anything else in the world. For Maria, it felt like stepping into a soft light after being in the dark for too long. Their first walk together happened on a sunny afternoon. The agency had arranged a small picnic for everyone. While other people were busy talking in groups, Maria found herself sitting on the grass, helping Lily braid flowers into a little chain. Lily laughed as the flowers slipped through her fingers. Thomas watched from a few steps away, his hands in his pockets. He wasn't rushing anything. He wasn't trying to impress. He was just watching, really watching, like someone seeing something they had thought they'd lost. When the sun began to set, Lily curled up next to Maria on the blanket and whispered, "You feel like home." Maria's breath caught in her throat. No one had ever said those words to her. For a moment, she didn't know what to do. Then she gently wrapped her arm around Lily and held her close. Thomas saw the way Lily's head rested on Maria's shoulder, and something shifted quietly in his heart. He hadn't planned to let anyone in. He had promised himself he would only come to the event to make a friend, maybe talk, not open old wounds, but the way Lily connected with Maria was something he couldn't ignore. A few days later, Thomas invited Maria to meet them at the town park. She arrived early, holding a small paper bag with homemade cookies she had baked in the shared kitchen. She wasn't sure if they would like them. She wasn't even sure why she cared so much. But when she saw Lily's face light up at the sight of the cookies, she felt a kind of happiness she hadn't felt in years. They began meeting regularly, small walks in the park, quiet talks by the lake, sitting together at the agency gatherings. It wasn't a fast or dramatic story. It was gentle. Every day, Maria felt less like a stranger in a new country and more like someone who belonged. Thomas slowly opened up about his past. He told her how he met his late wife, how they built their little home together, and how hard it was to lose her. He spoke in simple, careful words, not to make her feel sorry for him, but to let her understand the pieces of his life. Maria listened with soft eyes and a warm heart. She didn't try to replace anyone. She simply listened, and that made all the difference. Lily, meanwhile, became a little sunbeam in Maria's life. She began holding Maria's hand when they walked, drawing her little pictures with hearts and flowers and saying things like, "You make Daddy smile again," without even knowing how deeply her words touched them both. But even with all this warmth, Maria still carried fears inside her. She often asked herself, what if he changes his mind? What if I'm not good enough? She remembered all the times before when men had smiled politely and walked away. She remembered her old life, where she often felt invisible. One rainy evening, Thomas walked her home after another quiet day in the park. They stopped at her doorstep, raindrops falling softly around them. Maria hesitated before speaking. "Thomas," she whispered, "I need to ask you something." He looked at her gently. "What is it?" "Why me?" she asked softly, looking down at her hands. "There are many women at the agency. Pretty women, younger women. Why do you talk to me?" Thomas was silent for a moment. He stepped a little closer, but not too close. "Because," he said finally, "when Lily looks at you, she smiles in a way I haven't seen in a long time. And when I talk to you, I don't feel like I'm trying to make something happen. It just happens." Maria's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from something warmer. She lowered her head, but Thomas gently lifted her chin. "I don't want someone perfect," he said softly. "I just want someone real. And you're real." That night after he left, Maria sat by the window and watched the rain fall, feeling something new in her heart, something steady, something safe. Weeks turned into months. Maria started helping Thomas with small things. She would sometimes bring Lily lunch at the park or help her with little crafts. She started teaching Lily a few words from her language, and Lily would proudly repeat them, laughing every time she got one right. Thomas would watch them from the porch, smiling quietly. Then one warm spring evening, Thomas took Maria and Lily to the small lake on the edge of town. The sky was painted with soft pink and gold. Lily ran around chasing fireflies, her laughter filling the air. Maria stood by the water, her reflection shimmering on the surface. Thomas walked up beside her. He didn't have flowers or fancy words. He just looked at her with quiet honesty. "Maria," he said softly, "I wasn't looking for love. I was just trying to give Lily a better future. But then you came along and I found more than I expected." Maria turned to face him, her heart beating fast. He took a deep breath. "Would you stay? Not just for Lily. For us." Maria felt tears fill her eyes again, but this time she didn't look away. She nodded slowly, her voice soft but full of feeling. "Yes." Lily ran over at that exact moment, holding a small flower in her hand. "Does that mean you'll be my mommy?" she asked, just as she had whispered months ago. Maria knelt down, cupped Lily's tiny face in her hands, and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. I would love to be your mommy." Lily threw her arms around her neck, and Maria held her tightly, closing her eyes as the soft breeze touched her face. Thomas stood behind them, smiling quietly, his eyes warm and full of something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Maria's journey hadn't been easy. She had traveled far, faced rejection, and felt invisible for so long. But in the most unexpected moment, through the gentle heart of a little girl and the quiet strength of a kind man, she found what she had always been searching for: not just love, but a home. And as the sun set behind them, painting the sky with soft golden light, Maria knew deep inside her that she was no longer the woman waiting on a cold train station bench. She was a part of something real, something beautiful, something that would last,